New Land Beyond returning with Edge of Fate, we now have more than 30 exotics in Destiny 2 that originated in Destiny 1. So today we're going to be discussing all 31 Destiny 1 exotics that were reprised and added into Destiny 2. But there's a twist. We're going to be going through every single weapon and we're going to be deciding whether they were more impactful in Destiny 1 or in Destiny 2. What makes a weapon more impactful? And were more of these weapons impactful in Destiny 1 or in Destiny 2? Those are both great questions, and if you want to know the answer, make sure to watch to find out. If you end up enjoying this, liking and subbing is appreciated, and let's get into it. We are going to kick things off with Mida Multi-tool, the weapon that was the first exotic that I ever got in Destiny 1. This is a weapon that, in my opinion, like, it was really good in D1. And then in vanilla of D2 was also really good. And that was partially because there was just nothing that was really good. So it didn't take a high bar to be really good in D2. Mida also had some raid tech for Crota. Well, yeah, it did. Like there was multiple reasons to use Mida outside of even just killing things with Mida. That was kind of an interesting part about Mida. Now, in general, do I see any Mida users in D2 at this point? No, not really. Not really, at least. This one's tough for me, like, right off the back, to be honest. Like, because in my mind, I feel like Mida was consistently stronger for longer in D1, but I feel like it, like, impacted things on a much crazier level in vanilla D2. Is that crazy to say? I'm already kind of struggling on this first one. I'm already at a crossroads here. This is what I will say. I think Mida's impact was because of just how limited we were with double primary. D1 Mida was a lot stronger, but I'm not rating this on strength. If I rate this on strength, most weapons in D2 are going to be stronger just because naturally we are just stronger in D2. Like, I just got to keep it real. Like, almost everything to a certain degree, like, is more potent in D2 just because as a whole we're stronger in D2. So the last thing I want to rate something on is strength, personally. I don't want to. All right. I'm cheating. All right, we're moving on to Suros. Okay. All right, so with Suros had a little bit of time in D2, like a slight little bit of time in D2 where I thought that it was really fun to use. It was like a very short moment in Crucible, but overall this one isn't really too hard for me. I think it was more impactful in Destiny 1. I don't even think that this one's hard. All right, next, the best weapon in Destiny history. This one goes in, we're gonna do it last. We gotta save the best for last, right? We gotta save the best for last. All right, Bad Juju. Bad Juju. Okay, let's talk about this weapon for a second. So Bad Juju, I mean, I think Bad Juju is not a bad weapon in D2. I think it's honestly a pretty decent weapon. I think that when I think about D2, I think back to, like, always what I kind of think about is how we were building from the Whisper mission to the 0 Hour mission to then getting the other side mission that most new D2 players will never even know existed, and kind of like obviously not having it live up in at least the secret mission department. But obviously we're not going to judge this based on how it was brought into the game, but that did already leave a little bit to be desired for me in D2, if I'm being honest. I think that Bad Juju, I'm still actually leaning towards D1, to be honest, and this isn't just because I didn't love the other side mission. I just remember that, like, in an era of not having like a trillion mods and a trillion things to kind of boost things up, like super-wise or like a lot of different things, even though, to be fair, orbs were a little bit stronger back in the day, I think that like the instant super in D1 was really fun in D1, and I think that it made a little bit more of an impact in D1. Am I crazy to say that? I'm going with D1. Bad Juju for sure, but I do think that Bad Juju's decent in D2 too. All right, hand cannon, guys. We're gonna talk about Ace of Spades. So this one, in my opinion, it's funny because most people, I think, that aren't D1 like legit OGs don't even know that this weapon used to be just a Hunter exclusive hand cannon. Now, if you were watching the D1 subathon, you remember us unlocking this on our Hunter during it. This one's no question though. Like, in an era of D1 where we already had such dominant hand cannons, it not even in the same planet, in my opinion, make the splash that it did in D2. I don't even think this is a question. This next one's easy for me, I gotta be honest. Do I see every once in a while when there's a really long range map, people bring out the Jade Rabbit in D2? Yes, I do see it. But for me, this one's no question. No question. Jade Rabbit was so fun in D1. It was so strong in D1 in my opinion. I used Jade Rabbit so much in D1. Like so much. Now that's not to say I actually think Jade Rabbit's decent in D2 and it has its use cases. But for me, this one's easy. At least for me. For me, Jade Rabbit is on a different planet in D1 than it is in D2. That's not to say like if you compared their strength that it would be on another planet. But I think impact wise, I just think that in D1, like Jade Rabbit hit harder from a impact perspective. All right, guys, we're back to another Forsaken exotic. And just like its Forsaken counterpart with Ace of Spades, I am once again bringing it into the D2 category for Chaperone. Now let's talk about Chaperone. So Chaperone, quest-wise, good lord, that D1 quest. If you were watching the subathon, you'd know that I was pulling my hair out trying to get this done with Last Word because I'm horrible with Last Word. And this quest sucked, and I hated it. And I mean, this quest really only was rivaled in D1 by the Thorn quest in terms of Crucible Pain. If we're talking about just quests alone, D1 quests made a bigger impact on my mental health. But in terms of the weapons at a whole, that Forsaken era was Chaperone and Not Forgotten, or Chaperone and Lunas, or Chaperone and Trust, or, you know, just that era in general where you were either using a Chaperone or a Dust Rock Blues. Like, you guys remember, it's no question. It's no question that this was more impactful in D2. All right, Hawkmoon, guys. Hawkmoon, this is the first of the legendary trio, the three birds, Moltres, Articuno, and Zapdos, or Suicune, Entei, and Raikou, or whatever other trio we want to think of here. This one's going to be interesting, guys. I think this is going to be one that might upset some people here because impact-wise, two of these, in my opinion, are no-brainers. And then one is a little bit more, I think, on the fence. Can you think, before I even bring it up, which one of the three would be on the fence? I'm curious what you guys are thinking, and if any of you guys are in my brain. Two of these, in my opinion, are no-brainer D1. One I'm on the fence on. I want to see it. Pig says Last Word. Dub says Last Word. Thorn Austin says anything else. Okay, all right, so only a few guesses there. Thorn 2 taps for days, Hawkmoon 1 tap days. Very no-brainer in my opinion. So it's actually not, and I'm gonna give you a few reasons why, Pigs, and we'll see if you recant on that. Hawkmoon 1 taps were insane. They were, I remember. But it was for a very, very short period, and while it was an exclusive. And then that period kind of left quick. And then everybody started using Luck in the Chamber normal legendary hand cannon and stopped really using it to the same degree. And that's why I'm on the fence with this one. I'm actually on the fence with Hawkmoon. So Hawkmoon's impact still, like I would argue, like partially was lived on through legendaries. But I do think that like long-term use-wise, Hawkmoon was more used in D2 than D1. This is me taking my nostalgia glasses off, by the way, too. For me though, guys, I'm gonna be honest, I think that like Last Word wise, let's talk about the other two for a second. Last Word, it was just so good for so long. It just made such an impact on things. Like Last Word was just insane. That weapon was just insane, man. It was just so insane. And in D2, don't get me wrong, like Last Words had its moments too. Like I would say like even to a certain degree that it's even bled into the PvE side of things sometimes now, right? Which is interesting. With like Lucky Pants, which I think is sick. In terms of Thorn, yes, I do think that Thorn impacted D1 for longer in the sense of A, it wasn't an exclusive, B, when Thorn first dropped, kind of like Hawkmoon, but for longer, Thorn was just like, it was so insane. In the Mania, I remember Thorn causing, because its quest was also equally hard, caused like this like manic panic that like I can't even like describe on both sides of the game too, Xbox and PlayStation. Thorn was the PvP version of Gally, the shadow that casted over PvP will never be topped. Yeah, I think for me, I'm gonna be honest, guys, and I'm like, this can be subject to change. This is where I'm gonna leave things right now. Before we go any further, let's add a twist for once we finish. At the end, I'm gonna have to decide one weapon that I believe should have never returned to Destiny 2. Think of a weapon that you would choose? Now hold that thought until the end of the video. Sleeper Simulant, guys. Sleeper, in my opinion, was really great in both games. Like really, really great in both games, actually. I actually really like D1 Sleeper. And I think the quest in D1 was sick. And I loved doing it. I loved doing it in Destiny 1 again in the subathon. I'm gonna be honest, every single contest dungeon zone, every single contest raid zone, every single anything. It doesn't matter. It feels like Sleeper Simulant is one of those you try to bury it 100 feet deep and it finds a way to claw out, or 500 feet deep and it claws out. Every single contest, anything, this thing shows up. It doesn't matter. I think it's D2 for sure. Like for sure. Well, I guess the D2 quest doesn't even exist anymore. Do you guys remember the D2 sleeper quest when it did exist? It was honestly pretty sick. I liked that quest. Now, granted, we can't play that quest. All right, guys, let's move on to the Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo. This one's an interesting one for me. Monte Carlo's interesting for me. I'm gonna be honest. I think for me, it's D1. And that's not to say that I don't like it in D2. It just feels like it kind of just existed in D2 and that's kind of it. I feel like that there was zero impact on D2 with Monte Carlo. I just think it just exists. I think it's good. I think it's a good weapon. I'm not saying that it doesn't have a place. There's a difference between having a place and impact in the game. I think it's just kind of there. Monte Carlo is a better weapon in D2 than it is in D1, but I just don't think it's impacted D2 at all, in my opinion, at all. I just think it just exists. Are we ready for Outbreak? Now, granted, I know that technically Outbreak Perfected wasn't in D1, but we're gonna be using its counterpart between Outbreak Perfected and Outbreak Prime. They're close enough. Now let's talk about it. Let's talk about impact here because in my opinion, this has been one of the most impactful weapons of all time, period, right? I think that 0 Hour was one of the if not the pinnacle of Seeker missions in the history of our game. I think Outbreak Prime's raid quest is one of the pinnacle quests in Destiny history. So I think that if we just go off how you get the weapons alone, both of the two weapons are pillars of like the pinnacle of experience of obtaining a weapon. So then let's take it a step down and just talk about how they actually play in the game. And when it comes to how they actually play in the game, I actually think it's a no-brainer that it's D2. Once again, another weapon that it seems like no matter what, people always have this weapon at the back of their inventory ready to go just in case they need it. I remember this was the thing that got me through Crown of Sorrows too. You guys remember this thing with the catalyst? That thing was eating up Gjallarhorn. All right, no time to explain, guys. No time to explain. This one's an interesting one, to be honest. If we're talking about quests alone, the D1 no time to explain quest was sick, and just having to complete the campaign to get it in D2 was kind of left a lot to be desired, in my opinion. So if we're just talking about how they entered the game, it's obviously D1, but in terms of like the actual weapon and like how it impacted the game, I think that in terms of just strength alone, obviously it's D2's, it's on a different planet. So then it becomes like a matter of which one impacted the game more. And I still feel like I lean towards D2, but man, did D1's quest hit really hard. I really like D1's quest a lot. I thought D1's quest was sick. Going back into the Vault of Glass, finding the ghost, going through the portal. Man, yeah, I think that it impacted the actual game and the gameplay experience more in D2, but like, man, that quest. Man, that quest. Nobody cared about it in D1. The reward was the quest, not the gun. You're not wrong, and that's why I lean towards where I lean, but you're not wrong. Is it kind of crazy that we're tied up so far at 6? This is kind of crazy. We're tied up at 6. Okay, Touch of Malice. This one's not even close to me. Calcified fragments. The shift of what it meant to collect a raid exotic. Like now, obviously, Crux of Crota kind of shifted things a little bit too. Like we didn't need to get Husk of the Pit and do a few things before you could get Crux, but it still was a random drop from the raid after the item. But man, did Touch of Malice like expand on what a raid exotic could mean. It made it where we explored the Dreadnought to a degree that I don't think we've had to ever explore a location ever again for any other weapon. In my opinion, even with the Catalyst, it's just meh. I wish they would have just kept it in D1, to be honest. Touch of Malice was my favorite weapon in D1, that's why I'm saying it. But in my opinion, this is a no-brainer. Let's talk about Necrochasm, honestly the foil to Touch of Malice, because in my opinion, both of these kind of broke the mold of what raid exotics were in D1 to a certain degree, but one ended up being really good and one ended up being very forgettable in terms of its actual use. I think that I'm gonna just stick with the parallels here, and I think I'm just gonna have the brothers kind of just sit there and kind of fight it out. I think that it's better in D2. I think that that's not even saying anything. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep these split up. Let's just let them duke it out. I think that that's fair. I think Touch of Malice D1, Necrochasm D2. I think I'm fine with that, and I think I feel good. I think I feel good with how this is looking. Is Necrochasm, compared to all the other weapons in D2, better in D2? Or if you compare all of the weapons in D1, is Necrochasm better in D1? I think I lean towards D2's Necrochasm, I think. I'll leave it at that. I'm okay with this. I think for sure, if we're just talking about Crooks of Crota, then for sure it's D1. But like, I'll leave it like this, and I think I can sleep at night. The Khvostov, guys, the Khvostov. This thing kind of really shook things up when it came out in D2, didn't it? I think that in terms of like breaking the mold, I thought was pretty cool in D1. But I think that this one actually ended up making a bigger splash in D2. I don't think that that's like pretty crazy to say. I will say that I think that the innovation at the time was really cool in D1. Whisper of the Worm, we're going to be comparing this to its Black Spindle counterpart. Once again, I know that they're not quite the same, I get it, but this is just what we're going to do. Let's talk about getting the weapon first. Once again, in my opinion, the pinnacle of what it means to obtain an exotic weapon in both games again. I think Lost to Light, you know, going through, having a door come out of nowhere, or not come out of nowhere, but open up out of nowhere and throw us into this timed, crazy, mission where we need to kill all this Taken, I think was insane. And then the Whispered mission as a whole coming out of nowhere in Warmind, and then having the portal come out in IO, and then going into this mission was also just so cool. So like, once again, I think that both of these, in terms of obtaining, are like the pinnacle of what it means to collect an exotic in Destiny in general. But in my opinion, I'm going to give the nod to Black Spindle solely because it's a special weapon. Because I think that as the progression of Black Hammer to Whisper of the Worm, they constantly kept making it slightly worse. But I want to keep it in mind that Black Spindle, Whisper of the Worm, Outbreak Perfected, Outbreak Prime, in my opinion, are some of the most impactful weapons in Destiny history, period. It doesn't matter the game, in my opinion. We'll like foil them once again and kind of have them like lined up together, since they kind of like are like brothers. And we'll leave it like that for now. All right, guys, this next one's an easy one, but a fun one too, in my opinion. I remember when Queenbreakers came out in House of Wolves, it was a super interesting and unique weapon that just unfortunately, like, while it had its very niche uses, and I think there were some demons with it in the Crucible, to be honest. I remember there were some Queenbreakers demons in D1. I don't think it's even arguable that between where Queenbreakers is right now, and honestly where it was when it originally launched with how it wreaked havoc in Gambit, is all more than what it did in D1. Like, I feel like Queenbreakers has had two surges, let's say. Its initial launch, I thought it was really good in D2, and now it's having a re-renaissance, basically. I don't know if Queenbreakers ever even really had a like real like I'm the king moment, or like a real like dominance moment in D1. It was cool though. When like you see montages in D1 with people using Queenbreakers, it's always really sick. But we're going D2. Thunderlord. Now, while Thunderlord was really, really cool in D1, and I mean it spawned its like, you know, two counterparts too with Nova Mortis and Abaddon, I still think it's probably D2, no question. No question. No question. But I will say that I think it was really cool, the concept of like having the like, it was like almost like a Raise Lighter, Dark Drinker, Bolt Caster, only LMGs, kind of, right? And I thought that was kind of sick. I would love for them to bring the other ones back. But the Thunderlord quest in D2 though, let's talk about that for a second. Anybody remember Thunderlord quest in Festival of the Lost? And does anybody remember how that ended? Do I have any OGs around? The next one is Dragon's Breath. And I gotta be honest here, Dragon's Breath, now first off, let me do two things first. Let me preface the first part. I don't really hate anything, but like I really don't like Dragon's Breath, Trespasser, and other D1 weapons like Red Death Reformed being Season Pass weapons. I hate that so much, guys. I really don't like these things being Season Pass weapons. But what I will say is this, Dragon's Breath actually represents one other thing too. In my opinion, it represents the correct way of how to reprise an exotic. I really liked the renewed take on Dragon's Breath. And I'm actually going to give Dragon's Breath the nod, in my opinion, I think, in D2. I think. Can you guys agree with that, or am I tripping? All right. We're going with Dragon's Breath here. In my opinion, like I said, I think it represents what D2 like reprised weapons should be, in my opinion. I thought they did a really good job. Like, I gotta give credit where credit's due. I thought they did a great job. Next weapon, Truth. All right, guys, am I tripping where I just say that like Truth was just too cool in D1? That tracking was just too cool in D1. The craziest tracking ever. There still has not been tracking like D1 Truth. And there probably will never be. Heartlight. I remember when Heartlight terrorized Trials in D2. when Trials came back. Do you guys remember week 1 of Trials of Osiris when it came back in D2? Do you guys remember that week? With that being said, Heartlight was cool in D1, and I remember when I got it, I was really excited because it was like one of the other like earlier exotics that I got, and I thought it was really cool to have. But is it fair for me to say, even though I thought that D1 Heartlight was cool, I don't think that it impacted things very much? I thought the concept was really cool though. But it was cool. It was innovative. Heartlight was really innovative in D1. I think I'm going with D2. I remember I think Heartlight just being able to toggle it like the way that it worked, because in D1 it was using like I think its D1 original perk was like kinetic damage, right? But I think in terms of like how much impact overall it had on the game, I think I gotta go with D2. I think I'm going with D2, guys. I think I'm going with D2. Lord of Wolves, man. Another weapon that just won't die in D2, to be honest. I mean, it got introduced in Forsaken. Remember having to do the, remember when this used to be unlocked through Spider? Is anybody around for those days? Remember like Spider and want it bounties and all that type of good stuff back in the day? I think that this is like a no-brainer. Lord of Wolves D2, Queenbreaker's Bow D2. If they ever decide to bring back Dreg's Promise, I bet I would choose D1. But obviously it doesn't exist. But I bet I would choose Dreg's Promise D1. Fourth Horseman. It's always interesting. The more hardcore you go, the more you see Fourth Horseman, right? Fourth Horseman is one that was honestly like really good in both games. Like, I remember the first, like, because I think they're neck and neck. The problem I think Fourth Horseman suffered from was Gjallarhorn being too good. I really feel that way. I think that if Gjallarhorn didn't exist, it would have been used so much more than it already was. I just think Gally was too good. I think that like no one really used it to the same degree, even though it was super good. I think that I'm gonna go Fourth Horseman in D2. I think that I'm on the fence still though. I could go either way with Fourth Horseman. I think I'm putting it here. Trespasser, no question for me, is D1. I gotta be honest too, like I said, these weapons are what represent what's wrong with the Season Pass. Destiny 1 exotics don't belong in the Season Pass. Also, I feel like in terms of like the reprisals, like if we're just comparing the Season Pass ones real quick, I think this, like Dragon's Breath was such a more fresh air take on Dragon's Breath than the new Trespasser was on Trespasser. Trespasser in D2 is okay. I don't really care though about it too much though. Red Death, I'm the same way, guys, too. I think Red Death is pretty decent in D2. No question, D1 Red Death. Trespasser dropping before it was supposed to was so memorable, and then also exotic boots dropped before they were supposed to too, which ended up kicking off my YouTube channel. The 338 exotic boot glitch. This video changed the whole trajectory of my YouTube channel. 338 boot glitch. What an era of time that was. That video is 8 years ago. Look at this. Like, it's crazy too. I was so excited, guys. Let's take a quick journey down memory lane real quick. Look at this. I said, wow, thank you for 180. We had hit 180 subscribers. Man, what an era of time this was. Okay, let's get back to it. All right, guys, you know what? We're getting into the juicy ones, which means it's time to come back to Mida. I think this is where I'm gonna go. I think I'm putting it in D1, and I'll give my rationale, and then you guys can just agree or disagree depending on it. The biggest splash that Mida made in D2 was year 1 with double primary, obviously, and it made a big splash that year. But I think if we go over the whole like kind of longevity of the game versus the longevity in D1, I think Mida impacted things for longer in D1 than Mida did in D2. I think Mida reigned supreme for lack of better options, and because we were in a team shot meta. But I think for longer, Mida was, I think I'm going with D1. All right, we got a fun one on our hands. Vex Mythoclast. All right, Vex Mythoclast. We have a fun one on our hands. Does anybody remember year 1, week 1, Vex Mythoclast? This one had a wave very similar to Thorn, where like you couldn't exist in the game without this thing for a quick moment. It was that strong. I remember this first week of this weapon. Was anybody there for that? The time to kill is insane. It really was. It tore through the Crucible. All right, this is where I'm at with this, and then you guys can let me know your rationale. This was the first raid exotic in Destiny 1 history. The splash that it made, not just on the first week experience in the Crucible, but just on Destiny as a whole. This kicked off what it meant to be a raid exotic. And every single raid exotic that was built past that. In D2, I thought they did like a fresh take on it with like the charged shot. I thought that was pretty cool. But overall, I still don't think that Vex Mythoclast impacted D2 to the way that it impacted D1. And I think that Vex Mythoclast impacted the whole franchise. Like, I think that this was like, this represents in a lot of ways rating in general for Destiny. I think I'm going with D1. Okay. No words. Sorry, guys. No rationale here. It is what it is, guys. Sorry. All right. No rationale. No rationale. Sorry, guys. Sorry to my D2 Icebreaker enjoyers. Just no way. Sorry. No way. You know what's so crazy, guys, about what's happened so far, and I promise this hasn't been on purpose? Do you guys see how balanced this is right now? We are right now on a dead even tie at 14 apiece. The D2 Icebreaker is cool, but there's no rationale that I'm even giving. I'll give a small rationale. Icebreaker is very cool in D2. Coming back in a dungeon, you know, cool, whatever. But like Icebreaker and Gjallarhorn represent like more than just weapons, in my opinion. Like those like represent, I think, almost like exotics as a whole and what it means to be an exotic. The reactions that people had when they got Icebreaker will never be replicated. Same thing with Gjallarhorn. But guys, we're at a 14-14 tie. This is interesting because that means there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser between these two. Let's talk about Telesto next, guys. I think that this is an easy one for me. Telesto was cool in D1, but this is just a weapon that just can't be killed, right? It can't be killed no matter what this thing is. This thing is broken D2 like 90 times. Just impact on the game working alone. It's D2. You can't put this thing away. You can't bury it. It's the Undertaker. You can't keep him down. He always rises. You can't put this thing away. All right. Sounds like we're all on the same page. And next, the New Land / No Land Beyond. All right, let's talk about the No Land Beyond. Now, I got a chance to mess around with the New Land Beyond. I did pre-order the ultimate, what is it called? The ultimate, the mega juicer, whatever the edition is. The ultimate edition, I think is what they're calling it now. It was the deluxe at one point. I think now it's the ultimate. All right, with that being said, I used New Land Beyond. I think the stacking is cool. I'm excited to see like maybe how it affects the game in the future. But as of right now, and in my opinion, it doesn't matter even if they made this weapon like insta kill raid bosses. There is no level of impact that can top the impact of No Land Beyond in the Universal Remote collectively. Having the old mold of primary special heavy and allowing us to use a sniper rifle or a shotgun in that primary slot and what that opened up the game to in D1, it's no question that it's the D1 impact, as it completely broke the mold of what D1 the boundaries were. Well, guys, we are at a 15-15 tie with no more weapons to talk about. I guess we're done. Just kidding. And before we decide on the last one for all of the marbles, let's add one more twist to the end. After we decide on Gjallarhorn, I'm gonna choose one weapon from Destiny 1 that I think should be brought back to Destiny 2. What weapon would you choose? Now let's get into it. With the final exotic, with the not scripted, I promise I didn't script this. This wasn't scripted. I would not script this. This was I did not plan for this to happen. This is working out way too perfectly right now. And the fact that I saved it for last two, okay, like I could see the argument that there's a script. There's no script, I promise. Let's talk about Gally. Starting with D2, actually. Let's go in reverse. Gally was brought back in the 30th anniversary. Gally was the first D1 exotic to be a dungeon exotic. Obviously not the last, as Icebreaker came next. 30th anniversary, in my opinion, was a great era of Destiny as well. I think that like 30th anniversary and Into the Light, I think you could argue are better than 75 to 80% of seasons. Is that a hot take? 30th anniversary and Into the Light, probably 80%. There's some that I can think of that like I like some of my top seasons that I would pit it against, but like 80% probably, right? I think 80% is fair. There were whole channels made around Gjallarhorn reactions. Can you imagine a whole niche being behind people react? It was the coolest niche. It was the coolest niche. But can you believe that there was a weapon? Like, can you imagine now, like me making a channel and being able to just have it be around one of the D2 exotics and just showing people's reactions to getting a D2 exotic? I just noticed this was 2 times the speed. Reaction was 10 years after release. Yeah, this is a 10 year after release reaction. Now show us your reaction to getting the 30th anniversary one. Vet, this is actually a really interesting parallel that I didn't think to even think about, but I'm glad you said it. This might be my galley. Oh, nearly complete galley. Return to Shah Han to complete it. I'm about to grab this thing. I'm about to grab it. Here we go.
Give me the galley.
Give me the galley.
I need to
Man up, Spades.
Here we jokes. Here we go. Let me see it. Boom. Let me see how this thing sounds.
It's back.
It's back.
Ba-boom.
Let's go.
Well, not quite the pop-off. That was an interesting exercise. I didn't think to compare the two. That's okay. The pop-off is not. The thing that we need to realize is I got up and out of my chair 10 years later versus kind of what we just saw there. What I will say is I want to give some props to D2 first. D2, I think, re-imaged Gjallarhorn in my opinion in a unique way. It gave it a home, I'll say. Like, I just think that this is one of those weapons that just needs to always just kind of like, I don't think the Icebreaker or Galley, there's a lot of weapons I don't think had any business coming back. But I think they at least gave it a fresh take, but is absolutely no question as this weapon not only represents, you know, like D1 exotics, but in my opinion, like as a whole, this represents the magic of what makes exotics exotic, what makes exotics special, reactions that people still remember, moments that people still talk about 10 plus years later, 11 years later. It is the pinnacle of what it means to be a Destiny exotic. Not a Destiny 1 exotic, not a Destiny 2 exotic, but it is the pinnacle of what it means to be an exotic in general. It is literally the best weapon ever in the history of our game, in my opinion, in terms of what it represents. And because of that, this is our list, with D1 having 16 more impactful weapons than D2. We're gonna do one final thing, guys, one final little exercise, and then we're gonna call it a day. This is the first exercise, and I want you guys all to do this with me, but I'm gonna tell you mine though. So 2 new things. All right, guys, if I could reprise one Destiny 1 exotic that isn't back right now, what would it be? Super good advice, Pocket Infinity, get those in. Get them in, get them in. Any others? Zalo Supercell, Universal Remote, Tlaloc, Universal Remote, Pocket Infinity, super good advice. Universal Remote, weapons only. Yeah, this is a weapons thing. All right, I see a lot of people's answers. Are you guys ready to see my answer? Let me grab the image. One weapon. It is my turn. Plan C. Okay. And there we go, guys. And now time for my rationale. So every single weapon that I read, besides, funny enough, Vet, who also put it in as well, every one of those, in my opinion, had a major impact in Destiny 1. Let me read some of them again. Super good advice. I thought it had a big impact on Destiny 1. I love super good advice. That was my Oracle killer. Let me read another one. Pocket Infinity rained terror on the whole game. Zalo, in my opinion, one of the most impactful Destiny 1 weapons there were. People love Zalo. You know, I'm reading all these different weapons, and a lot of these weapons already had their time to shine. And that's the big reason why, because in my opinion, this weapon is at the bottom of impact in Destiny 1. So there's only one direction it can go, and that's up. So I would love to see Nemesis Star actually get to be the star of the show. No pun intended. And now, last one. All right, guys, chat amongst yourselves one more time. Out of all the 31 that we just did, one exotic that should not have returned to Destiny 2. Lord of Wolves, Dragon's Breath, Icebreaker, Dragon's Breath, Red Death, Truth, Trespasser, Outbreak, Touch of Malice. Okay, so I gave you guys a little bit of time, Trespasser. All right, let me get my answer ready. If it was my bias, Touch of Malice was my favorite weapon in Destiny 1. I hated the way they re-brought it back. I was really hoping for some sort of calcified fragment, new type of take that was on the throne world, make us go all over the throne world, rediscover in a way that felt nostalgic to the old days. That's bias. That's not my answer, though. Now let's talk about the purist in me. This is still not my answer. Still not my answer. But this is the purist in me. Gjallarhorn. It represents a period unlike anything other that I've experienced in gaming ever. It represents how beautiful, like, you know, scarcity can be implemented into lifelong memories, and bringing meaning into what you collect and not just what it can actually do. But then being coupled with being the strongest thing ever at the same time was like a recipe for Gjallarhorn, basically, right?
It's like 30th anniversary. What are we bringing back with the 30th anniversary? And they decided to bring back Gjallarhorn. Like the perspective of celebrating our 30 year, what are we bringing back? Gjallarhorn. Fair. The purist in me, Gjallarhorn should have never existed. Indeed, too. So, with that being said, since I'm not removing Gjallarhorn, I'm not removing Touch of Malice out of my bias or of my like D1 kind of, you know, I guess like whatever you want to call it, OG grandpa bias or whatever. There's one weapon that I didn't love that came back after that I can't excuse. Touch of Malice, like I said, for my bias. Gjallarhorn, but it's 30th anniversary. You know, handle your 30th anniversary the way you want to handle your 30th anniversary. In my opinion, then just implementing another dungeon that, in my opinion, just has nothing really to do with the 30th anniversary, even though it kind of came around the time of the 10-year anniversary. Like, it just felt like just continuing just to profit on the OG times and weapons that I just don't think should be continued to be brought back. It doesn't even want to be brought back into the thing. There you go. That's where I'm at. There you go. That is where I'm at, guys. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this exercise. I think this was really cool.